Hi guys, so we're going to continue on with our correction of and showing great examples of work here. So this is an exercise I gave you guys looking to write a letter to the king. It was based on the consequences of the Black Death. So the task was to use the sources from the previous exercises that we have done and your own knowledge of the Black Death to write a report for the king on the consequences of the Black Death for England. You were to start by explaining what the Black Death was and how it arrived in England. Then you were to explain what happens when people catch the Black Death. So this was highlighting the immediate effect of the Black Death. But then you were to look at all the sources and to identify what the effects are in terms of deserted villages, a shortage of workers or higher wages, where people thought the Black Death came from and their reactions to it, and people changing their attitudes, customs and behaviour. So there was a lot of really great answers came in. There was one that really stood out that we're going to run through right now. So this began the 17th of November 1348 and begins like this. Sir Edward III, the plague is spreading rapidly and everyone is getting very worried. It all started back in June. A while ago, news reached us of a horrifying and incurable disease which was quickly spreading through Asia, North Africa and Europe. Back then, they were only tales, but now we have seen it for ourselves. Merchants travelling from overseas brought the plague to Europe, Italy in particular, as it is where the majority of the trading happens. Europe is very well connected with the trading routes. The first cases were spread by Genoese merchants returning to Italy from Caffa. They travelled aboard ships, and in the terrible conditions, rats were often also on the ships carrying the Yersinia pestis. They then went on to bite humans, allowing it to spread drastically across the land. Humans then spread it amongst each other through coughing, known as airborne transmission. Anyone they came in contact with would be infected, as many of us are, and no one has a cure. The most secure remedy against the disease is to flee as early as possible to a place with healthy air. It is absolutely tragic. Most die within 3 days of being infected. There are so many dead bodies that they are often bundled together and thrown into the pit. This happens very often with peasants. There is no time to grieve. The pit is always full by morning. The citizens did little else except carry dead bodies to be buried. They are buried the next morning and the cycle repeats. All victims of this plague develop what is known as boils. They most often appear on the armpits and groin. Other symptoms include vomiting, headaches, coughing up blood, fever and blisters and bruises. The death toll continues to climb each day. Doctors are not helping either. Many are turning to God. They believe this is a punishment for our sins, but I don't know. Some say it's vapours or fumes coming from lakes and bogs. I have heard some even believe it's the coming together of planets, in particular Saturn and Mars. I don't know what to believe. Doctors are wearing large masks shaped like beaks and covered head to toe in a large waxen coat, which is said to be modelled on soldiers' armour. They often carry long wooden sticks to examine and communicate with patients. It is believed they are wearing these masks to avoid miasma, a noxious form of bad air. They wear boots, brimmed hats and gloves for protection. At least they treat the wealthy and the poor. However, there is no known cure right now, and everyone is scared. There have been many effects as a result of the plague so far. Sheep and oxen wandered free through the fields and among the crops, and there was nobody to drive them off. Everybody is in a state of panic, and the population is slowly going down. We have never had so many dead in such a short period of time. It's only been a few months since the plague has arrived. There are less and less people to work, and the peasants are demanding higher wages for their work. This concerns the lords greatly. There are many more people offering higher wages, and many peasants are still refusing to work. I'm assuming this will only get worse with time, and if the plague does pass, peasants might be able to charge however much they please. The lords are already desperate. Land is worth little because it's poor and stony. Small villages are being deserted and farms are suffering. Crops are rotting and there is no one to take care of the animals. There are several deserted villages, and as I have mentioned, the number of dead is overwhelming. I've even heard rumours of Jewish people poisoning the wells. I don't believe it to be true, however, this isn't the first time I've been told this. Please do what you can to help your people. Now this is an absolutely fantastic answer that draws on all the sources that we have used and puts it into a fantastic story. You can almost feel the urgency, the despair, not knowing what to do, which is what many people would have felt at the time. It's really pushing this, showing off amazing historical empathy. By historical empathy, what I'm talking about is putting yourself in the position of the people at the time. It is a marvelous answer that really would have taken a lot of work and shows a lot of knowledge of the time period. The reason we do these exercises is that we can take this information, and if we can transform that information into something a little bit more personal, it becomes easier to remember this information. So hopefully this is a good example for you guys of what we were looking for in that exercise.